So essentially what you're going to do is draw a line to represent the length. So whatever your measurement is, so this will be the start. I can't get the whole thing in. So this is the start of it. So make a line, measure the length that you got from measuring and subtracting the 1/2 inch from your pattern, and mark it. What did I get? Because 7/8. 1, 2, yeah. And then, I guess the stupid thing was this. Just start off with it folded.
That just reminded me of young Sheldon. There's like a clip in it where
He folds paper.
no, the professor doesn't like the way he's working or he's wrong or something,
Yeah.
and so he just rips it. And then young Sheldon, he's like, "Oh, you can at least like make it straight." So he just grabs, puts a paper, puts a ruler. This one.
So this is the fold. I've measured 1 1/4 inches down because that's the finished height of the waistband. And I measured it again down here 1 1/4 so that I can connect these two markings. So there's the height because I'm using this ruler. So now on this I can measure the length that I need and mark it. Just make a rectangle essentially. And on one edge we're going to add a 1 inch extension. I can flip this. Essentially this should be center front and you're going out to the center back. We're going to double it when it's done. You essentially should be adding the 1 inch extension here. But I was going to say, if you added it there, and then because this is a draft, just trace it off and mark the 1 inch on the side that it needs to be. It's like as if you did it anyways. So our seam allowance is going to be nothing here, a 1/2 inch there, and a 1/2 inch here. So you can add the seam allowance because then when you cut it out, you can open it up and you'll have the full waistband. But it still is only half of it. So and in the industry they would never cut on fold, but you would want to make another pattern that's as long as the entire thing is, the entire strip that needs to be to go from center front back to center front. Because I'm not using the clear ruler, this is how you do it. Mark in more than one spot your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Am I drawing a blank? And then connect the two. Well, there's no seam allowance there, stupid me. So I won't add it to the other side. 1/2 inch. So center back isn't going to change here. And because I added the seam allowance stupidly, I'm not going to add it here because we're still going to say that that's the center back. No, that's the center back. And then your seam allowance will be on that other side too. But if it's too confusing, just don't use that seam allowance because now you're, having to remember all these things. So center back won't change. But if you have your clear ruler, obviously this entire process is a little bit easier. So when I cut this out, I need to stabilize it. Once again, you want it to be the same on the opposite side. You can use the staple. This is what I would do at home because I'm not going to sit there and use a lot of time to take those staples out.
Not that hard to remove.
Well, then we will send it to you. Kevin wants to take your staple out.
I don't know about that.
And then use your scissors, which I had, but then I threw somewhere. So when you're cutting things out, just to reiterate, try to keep it flat on the table. Don't close your scissor. Obviously, you can go back if you need to. Being left-handed, I have realized that I usually cut next to where I need to cut rather than where I need to cut. So I usually go back personally and trim off what needs to be done. So there's the waistband. This is half the waistband for the garment. So now I will, because it's a draft, I'm going to take this and open it up. So this is the full, this is what the waistband would look like, but it's only half the body. Tiny. But that's the actual pattern. The grain line, usually down the center. And the reason for that is because the strength is going around the waist this way rather than this way. If you have the cross grain, then this has a tendency to want to stretch because it's on the cross grain. So the grain line will go down the center of the piece. I'm just going to use that line that I had. So what you can do on this is to take a longer piece of paper or just draft it. It depends on what you want to do. This is probably not long enough. Maybe it is. And then place center back on the fold and trace this out again. Or just draft the entire thing if you want to. But if you are going to do that, if let's say I traced out the entire thing, continue the information on the opposite side. Don't leave the information on one side. Mark the seam allowances there. You can't assume anything. I can't assume that if somebody made this that they only added seam allowance on one side because it's only marked on one side. So make some sort of indication. There is theory out there, and I know that some people are taught it, but there is theory out there where you would notch the seam allowance. And I know that in your construction classes, your patterns are notched where the seam allowance is. So you don't have to think about it. The main ones that I look for, and you can do that, but what happens if you notch here and you notch here is that it weakens this corner. And because we're handling it so much, I would sort of try to persuade you not to use those notches only because we move them around out of the class. In the industry, they just hang them up on a rack and they're not going to somebody's house and they're not going in a car and they're not going places. But the notch that you would have here would be your center back and your side seam. And you'll see that in the textbook also. So in the textbook, they do all this drafting, but they have, I'm just seeing if they're drafting the whole thing for you. Notch E and C, button placement. So this becomes a notch at center front. Your side seam would become a notch, and your center back would become a notch, so that you knew exactly where those pieces fit on the garment. And because this is a ½ inch shorter, you're really sort of stretching this to fit the waistband so that there's more, it's like a rubber band. If the rubber band is tight on the product that you're putting the rubber band on, the rubber band does its job. If the rubber band is old and it is the same size as the thing that you're putting it on, then it's not serving a function. So this is why this is made slightly smaller. It's really an inch smaller because we have the other side to contend with.
When we are sewing the other side, so you said that's like half of the.
This I have to make the other half. I would never, because there's no such thing as cut on fold.
Yeah.
So you would want the entire piece.
Okay, so we have to draft the entire piece, or we can just like draft that and then draft another.
Draft
one.
the entire piece.
Draft the entire piece.
Yeah. Because.
In the industry, they don't do cut and fold.
No, that's not what I was going to say. But you are correct. Because I have this as center front, but our closure is probably at center back, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Because we wouldn't have a zipper down the center front of a skirt. In a pant you would. So this really is your, because that just dawned on me when you were talking. This is really your center back, but the other side doesn't get the extension.
Oh. Okay.
So we need to have the whole thing that's shorter by an inch on the opposite side.
Does it matter if we do the zipper on the back or can we do it on the side?
You can do it on the side too, but just it's the same principles that apply here. And if you're doing it on the side, it's usually always the left, and that extension goes towards the back. It doesn't come from the back forward. Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? So measure your, minus the darts, measure your waistline and draft your skirt. Add them together. And then, I was thinking it was like hailing by me this morning.
Oh yeah, I was thinking a little bit.
Subtract the dart and then draft your pattern that way.
Sweet.
And that's our first thing that we're doing today. I'll probably show you some manipulation of the skirt. And in